Hey everyone, it's Johnny here. Firstly, Happy New Year. I hope you all have a prosperous and healthy 2021. So, in 2020, I think we can all agree it was a crazy year. With everything that was going on with the pandemic and lockdowns and tears, the one thing that I noticed within business was this real shift over to a digital transformation. Everything was moving online. So, we were having meetings online, we were organizing our companies online. Now, within that, the one thing that wasn't spoken about as much was our website. We were all moving online, we were marketing online, we were communicating online. And at the heart of all our online communications is our website. So I started doing a lot more homework, a lot more research, and really started studying and throwing myself into websites. And most importantly, how to build a profitable website. So over 12 months and still now, I'm really throwing myself into learning how to build not just a really good looking website, a really brilliant website to use in terms of its functionality and its user experience, but how can you make it really profitable? And with profitability, we're really looking at inbound inquiries, inbound sales, and really increasing traffic and converting good traffic. So I made a video recently about conversion rate optimization, where I interviewed a friend of mine, Robert Deans. So we were looking at converting more people online, but now I'm starting to look into traffic, and we're looking at good traffic. And one of the best ways we can get good traffic is through search engines. These are people, these are live, warm, active prospects that are searching for the thing that we do through search engines and mainly Google. So I'm starting now to invest in SEO and really understand SEO, and not just from a B2C point of view, not just from an e-commerce point of view, but in the B2B environment. And that could be real niched, obscure products and services, right to large B2B commerce and in that area. So one of the first people I've spoken to is Sarah McDowell. And this is the interview today that you're going to hear. So Sarah McDowell is an SEO content executive at Holland and Barrett. So Holland and Barrett, a huge company, sell massive amounts of product online. They also have a range of a list of stores up and down the country. With their huge online presence, they sell loads and loads of product through Google, directly through their website, through Google Merchant Center, so Google Shopping, and loads of other outlets and distributors. So there isn't, in terms of a B2C market or an e-commerce market, there isn't really much that Sarah doesn't know about SEO from a product point of view. This conversation though dived a little bit deeper into B2B SEO. And one of the main reasons being that the reason why Sarah knows so much about SEO is that she has her own podcast, which is SEO SAS, which she co-hosts with another SEO expert at Holland and Barrett called Hannah. So we had a long conversation. I think it was about 40 minutes that you're going to see in a bit, all about SEO, about the importance of SEO, how it works, what does SEO look like in 2021? What does it look like what did it look in the past? And you're going to hear lots of really good conversation about SEO. So if you have got your own website, you're looking to grow your website, you're looking to develop a new website, then really SEO has to be at the top of your marketing list of things to do. So hopefully you'll enjoy this conversation. So yeah, this is Sarah McDowell, all about SEO, search engine optimization. Enjoy. Okay, Sarah, thank you for joining me today. It's amazing for your time. So obviously we're going through a bit of a crazy time at the moment, and with what you do, what does a day in the life look like for an SEO content executive? Just run me through a normal day.
A normal day.
Mm.
Well, I mean, so for me as a SEO content executive, there are sort of main roles and responsibilities that I have. So my role is basically to look after the content on the website and make sure that it is optimized so people come across our content and find us in Google. So a typical day could be me sort of looking at page titles and meta descriptions, re-looking at content that's already existing and ways to improve that, look at trends in the industry, create new content to go after more opportunities, reporting. So reporting is a big factor in my job, because anything that we do within SEO, you have to track. So you need to track because you need to know whether what you've done or the changes that you've made have worked. If they have, happy days, you can then roll it out onto other things. If it hasn't, then you need to act accordingly. I also do tests and stuff. So yeah, I mean, from the top of my head, that's sort of, and also keeping up to date with what's going on in the industry and stuff. So I hope I didn't blab too much and that answers that question.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's pretty full on. So you've got doing a lot of things. And I suppose now there's two other factors to sort of mix that up. Obviously, everything that's going on in the world, which we won't go into, but obviously there is a lot going on in the world, and Christmas. Now, with what you do, how much has that affected your work and the work that you do, or not at all?
So, Christmas, yes. So with SEO, you need to get ahead of the game, basically. So there is the sort of the age-old question, like, oh, how long does it take until I can see changes happen within the set? Like, when can I see rankings? When can I see improvements? When can I see anything? And like, there is the age old answer of it depends. And there's quite a lot of comicalness in that. But we say it depends because it really, really does. Because like things that you do to your website and pages, the success of that really varies on what your competition are doing, what Google are up to, what updates they're doing, and things like that. So with a campaign like Christmas, you have to get ahead of the game. Anything that we did for Christmas, we've done sort of 2-3 months ago, sort of thing, because you need time to sort of one, for Google to sort of index your changes and see what you're doing, and two, to see what you've done and what competition are doing for you to act accordingly and stuff. So with any sort of facet, I don't know if facet is the right word, but with any like marketing channel, we do with SEO, we do have plans for Christmas, and we had plans for Black Friday, and we had plans for Cyber Monday. But with SEO, it's less reactive. I've got a weird bit of hair that I'm just going to sort out there. It's less reactive and more about putting a plan together beforehand, sort of thing, and making sure that you're going after those opportunities and stuff, because you need, ideally, you need to leave yourself about 2-3 months, I would say, for your changes to have any changes, basically, and basically, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it does. Joe, it's interesting what you said there, because you've mentioned that about planning and waiting, and it sounds like that with SEO and what you do, and obviously you saying that you plan months ahead for certain campaigns, but for everything else in terms of your products, your pages, developments within the company, you must be planning months ahead, 6 months, 12 months. And most marketers are too impatient, and also business owners are too impatient. And the other thing is, not only are you planning so far ahead, but you're also waiting for results. Now that's, in the marketing world, quite unusual. But I think the word there is patient. You have to think about these things, plan it meticulously, and then wait. And so I suppose there isn't really a question there, but I suppose that's a lot of your job there, that you are kind of waiting to see what happens and planning ahead.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like that is the ideal world, and we don't always live in the ideal world. So many times there's always like a page has been live and SEO is the afterthought. So it's like, oh, we forgot. Can you optimize this? Can you do this and stuff like that? So as much as we do try to plan, and there's stuff that we can control. So obviously, I work at Holland and Barrett at the moment. And there's a team of us sort of thing. So because we're very SEO minded, the things that we sort of have control over and the things that we can plan, yes, we're giving ourselves that 2 months, 3 months ahead, whatever. That the more time we have to plan, the better that we can be with what we are doing. But yeah, there's so many times where that isn't always the case, but we still optimize. But it's just the fact that it's much better. So when you've got a new page or a new campaign or a new content, when that is live and first published, it makes more sense to make sure that you've optimized it. You're going after the opportunities. You looked at keywords. You looked at query. Do you know what I mean? Like you are going ahead with a new campaign, a new page, a new website in the best state that it can be, basically. So yeah, but obviously we don't always live in an ideal world, and you do have to be reactive sometimes, basically.
Yeah. Definitely. The other thing was when we started this interview, when I sort of said your job title, do you know what's really quite interesting there about your job title? It's a real reflection of how things have changed in the last few years. Because if you go back X amount of years in terms of like building websites, ranking, it was very much about the website in terms of the back end, the technical SEO. Now with content being so important, and also with content, with everyone working remotely, everyone's going through this big digital transformation. Obviously, as we record this, we're just before Christmas 2020. We're still in the throes of a big pandemic, and so content now is, well, you can answer this, it looks like it's really leading the way for traffic, whether it be blog posts, whether it be images, videos, etc. So how's SEO changed from a retail perspective in terms of content, and how important is it?
So yeah, basically content does, like you say, content plays a big role in customer journey, basically. So because so there has been a change. So since people can now go to search engines like Google, and they can literally search for anything now. So so when someone is going to Google and they're typing in a search query, it's you have your different types of search queries as well. So a big thing in SEO, and a trend that I've seen, is that SEOs need to focus on the intent and user experience going forward. So you have, general rule of thumb, you have sort of 3 types of keywords. You have transactional keywords, you have educational keywords, and you have navigational. Educational is pretty much what it says on the tin, so that's where people are asking questions, they're doing research into something, they need help in the buying journey. They've got a question, they want a query, they want to read some content to help them make a decision. You've got transactional keywords, where someone's going to Google with the intent to buy something. And then navigational is where you've got someone that goes to Google and they know the destination in mind. So for example, some people go into Google and type in Twitter, for example, because they want to go there. So yeah, the reason I'm talking about this is because you have to, when it comes to content, it's so important to make sure that you understand the intent behind the keywords that you are going for, and making sure that you are serving and creating and writing the right content to fit the customer journey and where someone is within that process. Because if you get it wrong, that user is going to bounce off your page and go to your competitors and go elsewhere, and you've lost your chance of a sale, basically. So content is so important, but the quality of your content is also so. Google is always updating their algorithm. So when I talk about algorithm, what I just mean there is how Google decides what pages to show in what position on their search result pages. If I ever say anything that, because I very much get stuck in SEO lingo sometimes, and I just like roll it off. So if I ever say something, you're like, what?
No,
I also make up words as well. So I apologize for that as well. But where's it coming back from? So yeah, so Google is always updating its algorithm. It's always better. Like, so ultimately what Google wants to do is create the best user experience it can for its users, basically, like any business at the end of the day. So the one thing that they are always looking at is ways that it can make sure that the content that is being served to the end user is the very best it can be. So that's where quality and so one update springs to mind, and it was the Panda update. Can't remember when Panda was first rolled out at the top of my head. If you Google it, you can find it. But basically, when the Panda update came out, that was basically Google finding a way of weeding out all the rubbish content, thin, not very quality, just stuff with keywords, not very helpful for anyone. And Google's getting more and more sophisticated. And yeah, so when we are creating content, we need to make sure it is the best that it can be. And what I always ask myself is, whatever content I'm creating, have I answered all the questions that I can? Like, because that's your end goal as a content writer, isn't it? Like, you don't want to leave your user with more questions. You want to try and answer as many as you can, so then they can then go to the next sort of step in the process. So yeah. Have I answered the question, or have I blabbed a little bit?
No, you have, definitely. The question part's an interesting bit. Without going into using all the complicated software and the techniques that you use, how do you find out those questions? How do you know, beyond searching for a product, what people are searching for in terms, obviously, in regards to Holland and Barrett, their health issues, queries? Where do you gather this information?
Well, every SEO loves a good tool. Any tool that it can put, like, for example, I love coming across and finding extra tools that I can put in my arsenal to make me better at my job. So basically, whenever I'm doing keyword research and I'm putting together a content plan, there are the keyword research tools that I use. So for example, within our business, we use a tool called Bright Edge. It's quite enterprise level and quite expensive, but there are the more affordable ones like SEMrush, Ahrefs. So there you can sort of put in seed keywords. So basically a seed is how you start your sort of keyword research process. You're getting ideas and what have you. So yeah, you can go into your keyword research and do a bit of research to find opportunities. However, what else I like to do is, so whenever you type, if you go to Google and you use an educational intent keyword, Google will bring up people also ask. And there's an awesome tool that you can use called Also Ask, which basically gets this data all together. So you can put a keyword into Also Ask, and it will pull together all the people also ask, so the questions that are suggested by Google, and categorizes them together, so then you can like better plan your content. So yeah, and yeah, I think yeah. And without blabbing, I'm going to stop.
No, that's good. No, there's some really good tools there, and I'm sure the listeners will be interested in that. I'm just going to go back in a bit of time and tell you why we're having this conversation today. Obviously, because I want to talk to you, and you've got loads of information about SEO, which is super important. But one of the things that happened right at the beginning of the pandemic was obviously everyone shifted home. Everyone was working online, everyone was zooming, and this digital transformation was being talked about a long time ago. Then it really got accelerated because of the pandemic, because of everyone was working and buying and going online, and we saw that. The one thing that wasn't being talked about, especially in the B2B world, obviously e-commerce, we'll move away from e-commerce because we know that's its own beast. But in the B2B world, not many people were talking about websites. They were talking about furlough. They were talking about Zoom calls. They were talking about all sorts of stuff, but they weren't talking about, this is the time where we need to develop our website. And I said to Natalie, my business partner, I said, we really need to look at our website because everyone's online. We generate decent work from our website. We need more of it. We don't know what's happening in the world. And we do know that we need to keep this business going. We need to grow. We need to develop. So I'm going to really, really study, how do we build not just a better website, a profitable website. So I've been doing an audit of the current site. I did a conversion rate optimization audit of the site. I've been talking to marketeers, lots of people that you know and work with. And I'm on the mission now to build a profitable website. Now, when I speak to people that deal in digital marketing and website build, everyone talks about different things. Obviously, we're talking about SEO today. I talk to conversion specialists. I talk to marketeers. I talk to designers. I talk to like social media marketers, and everyone will have their area of business. Now, in terms of a website, let's just focus on B2B at the moment, because a lot of people that listen to this show will be more in the B2B area.
Right. Yes.
In terms of what is SEO to B2B businesses, and at the moment, why should they care? Because a lot of B2B owners are not thinking about SEO at all. And they will often say, oh, people don't search for what we do on Google. Now, is that a myth? Is it the truth? And if it is a myth, why is it a myth? Sorry, I just said about 5 questions there, but why should people in B2B, why should they care about SEO? That's the key question.
Because we have so much information at our fingertips, and it's so readily available because of places because of search engines like Google. Obviously you've got your other search engines as well, but obviously when we talk about SEO, Google is like the most used at the moment. Google has the monopoly, and that's a debate. That's an interesting topic in itself. But B2B businesses should care, because if they don't, they're missing out on such a big opportunity. Because, I mean, I don't know all B2B industries, and maybe there's a really niche, I don't know, very niche vertical in an industry basically. But I do think if that we do go to search engines, we do go to Google, we do search things, and I think SEO plays a part with everyone. And if someone can come across you by searching something within Google, whether that's information about something, whether they're I don't know, whether they're like doing research on a particular subject, whether they want to do reviews and stuff. I think that's a bit of a myth, and I do think, I don't know, it's just such a missed opportunity, because like people go to Google to ask questions and to find information and stuff like that. And I just worry that those businesses that are saying, no, we don't get business through Google, we don't get business through people search on the internet. How do you know that? Because somewhere in my head, I've read this somewhere, but before someone does business to you, they're meant to have sort of like, is it 7 sort of touches with your business or
7
brand?
touch points. That's between 7 and
General,
12. Yeah.
General rule of thumb. And 100% one of those touch points could be like in Google, couldn't it? Or in search engines or stuff like that. So I just think no business. Yeah, it's just a missed opportunity if people don't take it.
I agree. Joe, when I asked that question, I always did know the answer, but I thought I'd ask it to you to see what you say. No, I think every business should be developing an SEO strategy, and I for 2 reasons. The first reason is the process that you go through and from the creation of a website, the maintenance of a website, and creating content to generate traffic, that process is really, really logical, and also can also bleed into other areas of marketing. So by understanding your customers' pain points, pressure points, understanding what your competitors are doing, that doesn't just apply to an SEO point of view, it applies to all types of marketing. And I love the process of doing SEO strategy with brands, because I think it's as much business development as it is doing keywords, because of the nature of how you organize content, the words that you use, and how then you use your website. And that, yeah, no, go on, carry on. I've got another point, but you can jump in there then.
No, I was just wanted a thing that sprung up into my mind is one of the myths with SEO is people just think that it is keywords when it's not. Like, SEO is so much more than keywords, like, because Google and search engines are getting more and more sophisticated, and us as humans are getting more sophisticated of how we use and we want information and stuff. Like that, of course it can, like, SEO can bleed into other areas of marketing, and I kind of see it in a sense of SEO should be intertwined in everything that you do, because at the end of the day, SEO is a great way of understanding user behavior. Like, with SEO, you can understand what people are searching, how they're searching, trends as well, what do they care about, and having that data is so great, and you can use that. And SEO should, like, when it comes to marketing, me and Hannah, so she is my boss but also a co-host on another podcast, but we always say that marketing should be this big oily marketing machine where everything is working together. So I think at the moment in some businesses there's like silos, and campaigns and things are happening that are like, so for example, you've got email, social, PPC, SEO, and sometimes people, you have your different sort of verticals and your different channels all doing different stuff. Whereas if everyone worked together and everything joined together, and everything supported each other, you're just going to have a better marketing campaign, and you're going to have better success, aren't you? Because
so in that machine, if we look at it as a machine, where is SEO in that machine? What part of the machine would you say that is?
Well, it should be like in everything that you do. Like,
it's like the brain, it's the brains, it's the epicenter, it's like the control panel. Because I agree with that. I feel like SEO has it plays a big part in all types of marketing, because once you know what your customers want, once you know what your competitors are doing, and once you know within your funnel, your pipeline, how SEO is leading people along there, it plays it's not just a thing that you do, it's bigger than that, isn't it? It can dictate and move how your other marketing works.
Definitely. And I know that I'm going to be biased because I work in SEO and I'm going to feel passionate about it. But it just makes sense. And and going back to the point about some B2B people saying, oh, I don't need to do SEO. Well, what's the point in having a website in the first place? Like, surely, like, websites, they cost a lot of money. They're an investment. Well, that's what you should see them as, an investment rather than what they cost a lot of money. So surely it's a no-brainer. Like, because I've heard the term brochure website. Oh, well, we have a website because it's a brochure website, and we want to send someone to this to showcase. It's like, well, that's great, but surely you can be doing more with it. And like, rather than have it as a brochure website, you can change it into a converting, traffic generating part of the user experience. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, make websites, like, they could do so much for you if you let them, basically.
Totally agree. So my second point on why any business should be looking really be taking SEO seriously as part of their marketing mix, and it's a case study. Okay, it's an example. So we've got a client. They're an advanced engineering company, big company, work nationally, and very niche. So they basically recycle a certain part of of refrigeration, or there's a few different other types of technology. It's just a certain part that if left and just to degrade, it's really, really bad for the environment. So they have to recycle this part.
Interesting.
Now, the search for that is so minimal. It's nothing. So you'd look at it and go, well, our customers, it's all relationship led, and and they find us in a different way. Now, however, we found out that what they did was very policy led. And the reason why it was policy led was that there was a lot of lobbying groups within the government that were trying to get certain other types of companies, big companies, mainly construction, to rethink the way that they were demolishing buildings and demolishing certain things because of the environment. Now, most of these construction companies weren't taking it seriously because it wasn't something they needed to look at. But there was a horrendous accident, and I won't go into what it was, where something happened where this building that they were demolishing, or should have been demolished, it wasn't done properly. And so the company we work with had to work with the government to try and change the policy, because they had all the research that this certain thing needed to be disposed of a certain way. So they worked with the government to create this white paper, which was then published, which was then really, really searched for on Google, because these construction companies needed to know about this thing, which they searched for. It just so happens when they searched for this document and read it, within there was the company that we were working with. And just the contracts alone that they won from being on that document was worth millions and millions of pounds. Now, these companies wouldn't have known about this company if it wasn't for SEO.
Yes.
So,
that's a great story.
Yeah. So there's an example there. And I use that example when I speak to clients, that how strange and weird and how complicated SEO can be. It's not as simple as, I want to buy a rally bike, I want to buy a bike, or I want a pair of shoes, of dark leather shoes, and then you find it and you buy it. SEO is much more complicated than that. So that's kind of where I'm getting to with this. So I'm going to follow up this with a question. Let's just focus on B2B for a bit, because I think it's a lot more complicated, and I think some people want to know about this. But what do you think is the recipe for a successful SEO strategy? Where do we start with this?
Okay, well, first things first, and it applies to B2B, but it applies to SEO across the board, is you need to align your SEO goals with your overall business goals. So what I mean there is, how can you use what you're doing with SEO to reach a goal that you have for the general business? Because SEO can do that. SEO can help you get one step closer to where you want to be eventually. And as we keep saying, SEO is not just about keywords and search volume and traffic. SEO plays a much bigger part if you allow it. So if you are aligning your SEO goals with your business goals, and thinking, so everything that you do or decide, or when you put an action plan or any strategy together with SEO, ask yourself, this is great, but if I do this, does it help me achieve this? So whatever you do in SEO, and one thing that I do is I always weigh up resource and effort compared to the outcome and the results. So if there's an SEO task that's going to take a while, take a lot of resource, or you need budget for, what is the forecast for that? What are the results, basically? So always make sure that, yes, you are aligning those goals together, but making sure that the effort, the resource aligns with what the results are going to be at the end of the day. You need to track and measure everything that you do. So to have a successful SEO strategy, you need a benchmark. So you need to know where you are starting. And then after like a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months, you can set up, okay, how often do I want to report and see what changes am I doing? Because as we've said, any changes that you do to your website, whether that's optimizing the metadata, whether it's improving site speed, whether it's fixing a load of technical SEO issues with broken pages, you need to allow time for to see what the results are for that. So track and measure, and always, so when it comes to metadata, so when I'm changing title tags and meta descriptions, I always keep a log of what was previously there, just because then if I measure afterwards and things have gone downwards and not very good, you can revert back basically. You need to track and measure so you can foolproof yourself and make sure what you're doing, because SEO is all about testing. SEO is all about seeing what works. With SEO, I do blab a lot, so I do apologize.
No, you're not blabbing at all. It's all good.
I'm trying to keep on yeah. But yeah, so with SEO, it's all about, it's not a one size fits all. Obviously you have the fundamentals and you have best practices. So Google has a webmaster guidelines, which you can read, but it's thousands and thousands of pages. Well, not thousands and thousands, it's a lot of pages long. But obviously there's like fundamentals. So for example, on a page only have one header tag. There is an optimum characters that Google can show in a page title or a meta description, for example. So there are things that we know, okay, that is set, structured, but other things you need to test, sort of thing. So what words you're using in your page titles, and things like that. So just making sure that you're tracking and measuring everything you do, so then you can then see, okay, this is positively affected, this is negatively affected. And you can also see actually SEO is very important because it's allowed us to, like we've achieved this with it, which has then allowed us to be a step closer to this goal, basically. And also to be successful in SEO is you need to keep an eye on your competition, what they're doing, because we have it all the time. So you rank really well for a really high volume, high search volume term, and it's generating you revenue, and you're dominating, you're being really great. A competitor does something, wipes you out the water, and you've got to start again. So keeping an eye on your competition is very useful, because you need to know what they're doing so that you can act accordingly. And also by monitoring your competition, you can also come across other opportunities. A great tool, and I use it with Bright Edge, and I'm sure that there'll be other tools that do it, but you can do gap analysis. So where you put your URL in and your competitors' URL in, see what they're ranking for that you're not, because then there's some great opportunities there for you. Some opportunities that you might not have even thought about. So competition, monitoring them, gold mine. There's so much that you can go after. And then keeping an eye on algorithm updates. So obviously, I'm sure you're aware, Johnny, that a couple of weeks ago, Google decided to give us a lovely Christmas present and do a core algorithm update, which was absolutely fantastic, because yes, it was like happy Google from us, happy Christmas from us. So obviously when Google does a core algorithm update, so the thing to get across here is Google is always updating its core algorithm update. I read somewhere that Google's doing like 2,000 changes to its algorithm a day, sort of thing. Wow. But sometimes when they do a big algorithm update and it affects a lot of businesses or a lot of industries, that's when there's chitter chatter among the SEO community, and that's when like we get picked up on, oh, okay, there's been this big update, sort of thing. So a big update has just been rolled out, and we're still sort of waiting to, because whenever this sort of thing happens, people then do the research into it, find trends, see what websites have been affected, see what industries have been affected, see what factors on websites and pages are doing really well and what aren't doing so well. So keeping an eye on what Google are doing is very, very important, because you need to know what you're doing, where you are, and what they're doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. So there's three really takeaway points there. The first one that you mentioned was about obviously competitors. first thing was the second thing that you mentioned. No, the first thing you mentioned there was no. So I'm just remembering. First thing you said about there was no.
Lining.
Remind me again. That's it. Yeah, you do it. You say it.
So first up, to sort of overview my blabbing. So my first one was making sure that you align your SEO goals with your overall business goals, and making sure that they work together, that you are tracking and measuring everything that you're doing. Third point is to keep an eye on your pesky competitors, and fourth is keep an eye on algorithm updates and trends in what Google are doing. And there's loads of resource out there. There's loads of podcasts. There's loads of articles. There's people talk. And also, if you're on Twitter, actually, I don't know if I'm sort of segueing here, but Twitter has an awesome SEO community. So obviously I've had around 7 years experience now in SEO, but there's always something that I come across for the first time. I'm like, oh, I've never seen this before. What do I do? So I always go to Twitter, ask the question, and someone has had previous experience or they're knowledgeable in that area and they're so lovely and will help you. So the SEO community is wonderful. That was a bit of a segue, but yeah.
No, that's good. No, pro community. You mentioned podcast then. Now let's talk about the podcast. Okay. So the podcast has been going now for is it over 2 years? It must be over 2 years.
Oh my gosh, it is. Yeah. So it's 2 years in November.
Wow. So 2 years. And I remember when you came up to me and said, I'm starting my own podcast. Now that seemed actually longer ago, to be honest. So 2 years, which is amazing. And what's really cool here is that the co-host there is Hannah. Is it Hannah, isn't it? Who you work with. So that must be really, really handy that not only that you obviously you work with Hannah and you're the co-host of the show, but you're constantly interviewing people that are really, really knowledgeable at the subject. And then I take it, then you take that back then into, obviously you both work at Holland and Barrett, you both take that back and do you use that information and apply it in the business?
100%. So an example of that was a episode that's due to go out either next week or the week after is so I was sort of wondering, right, I've got my set processes of how to come up and identify keywords and search phrases opportunities, but I was just wondering, I wonder if I'm missing anything. Like, are there other ways to come across these opportunities? And it just so happened that we had someone that we interviewed about advanced keyword research, and we had a great conversation, and I was picking his brains about it. And I came away with a load of notes that then the next day at work, I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And the greatest thing is, like, you can learn so much just by having conversations. And I feel so fortunate, like, because I have a platform that allows me to do that. I have a podcast where I can invite guests on, and I'm like, I'll pick your knowledge and you can, and we can promote you to our audience, sort of thing. But what I have learned about the SEO community, and I've got a lot of love for the SEO community, is when I first started the podcast, I was terrified of asking people to join the podcast. I don't know why, but I was like, oh, they're going to say no, they're not going to want to. And I remember me and Hannah, when we first started, was like, oh my gosh, we have peaked the show if we ever get Rand Fishkin. So obviously, if you are an SEO nerd or you know of SEO, you would have heard who Rand Fishkin is, because he's like one of the daddies of SEO, really, isn't he? But like, so we made this massive thing in our head about like asking him and when's the right time. And I think I had a bit of Dutch courage, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to message, or I don't know whether Hannah messaged or something like that. And just by asking the question, every person that we've asked to join us and have a conversation about SEO has said yes. No one has been horrible. No one has said no. And why would anyone be horrible, sort of thing? But I think sometimes you can get in your head a little bit and like, no one's good. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, people who take SEO seriously, or they find it interesting, of course they're going to want to talk to someone else about it. Of course they're going to want to nerd out for half an hour. Do you know what I mean? So so I feel very fortunate because I've had awesome conversations with lots of different people, and it's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous. And I also get to talk about things that I'm not so good at. So when it comes to SEO, you have my speciality is more with the content side of things. However, there's local SEO, and there's a wonderful lady called Claire Carlisle, who is a whiz kid, and it was great to get her on the show because we could chat to her. But then technical as well. So we've had some really cool conversations. So we've had Ruth Everett and Hamlet Batista come to talk about Python and how you can use techie stuff to get better at SEO and things like that. So it is amazing. And I'm going to stop talking.
No, it's a really great example, Sarah, of how yourself, like an enthusiast. Obviously, you're very passionate about what you do. Obviously, you do it for a job, but how using a platform and using a channel not only to better yourself, learn knowledge, connect, network with people, but then use that in your own job. So,
and it's just a quick point, but it's also about educating other people as well. So one of the things that me and Hannah, so there's a couple of reasons why we started the podcast, but one of it was to make SEO fun and accessible. So when we put our podcast together, we were like, yes, we want it to be educational, but we want people to have fun, and we want people to laugh and like smile, hopefully, when they listen to a podcast. And that's why it works. So Hannah, yes, she's my boss, yes, she's my co-host, but she's my best friend as well. Brilliant. So we have banter, we take the mick out of each other. Then we get into like a serious topic, but an SEO SAS podcast is not an SEO SAS podcast without a feature that has nothing to do with marketing at all. So we wanted to create something where people could learn, because I think SEO can be this scary word as well. Like, oh, I don't want to do SEO. I'll fluff it up. Like, it's a bit scary. When no, it's not that scary. Come and listen to us, have a go, and test and try. So with the podcast, we want to educate people, but we want to entertain people as well. And hopefully we do that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you do. Yeah. You do. There's definitely two big takeaways there. Obviously, the first thing, in the e-commerce world, we know how important SEO is, and I think if anyone has an e-commerce store, they know how important it is. Let's look at B2B. What we know is that if you're a B2B company, whether you're niche, wherever you sit, whatever industry vertical you sit in, you need to be looking at SEO, not only as part of your marketing mix, but as a guide and as the epicenter of your marketing knowledge and metrics. So we know that that's a takeaway. A second takeaway, which I wasn't going to talk about, and I'm really glad that we have, is that creating a content channel, creating this platform in your area, with like-minded peers, with swapping information and knowledge, is so useful and so important for any industry. It doesn't matter if you're travel, e-commerce, technology, any business can create a channel where they can speak to people, gather information, share knowledge, and then use it in a practical sense in their own work.
100%.
So two great marketing techniques there and things that people can take away from this. But amazing. So Sarah, how can people find you? Where would you like to send them?
Oh, okay. So yes. So basically, so I've said before, but just again about the podcast. Our podcast is called SEO SAS, and if you search for SEO SAS podcast, you'll be able to find it and listen to your heart's content. We're going to be hitting 100 episodes, Johnny, like flipping hell. Like, yeah.
The centenary. Okay. Amazing. Are you doing anything special for it?
I don't know yet. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so please do check that out, and have a listen to some of our episodes. And then apart from that, I'm most active on Twitter and LinkedIn. So Twitter, I am Sarah MCD UK, or a fun way to remember that is Sarah McDuck. And yes, I'm also on LinkedIn. Can I say about, like, I've just started another podcast as well?
Of course.
So me and another friend have started another podcast, and it's a bit different. So it's called The Lipsticks, and we're hoping that it's your go-to podcast for good, honest gay chat. So so a bit different from SEO, but something for everyone. But yeah, I know that this is a marketing thing, but
It's good.
But basically, this podcast is, so it's me and my friend just talking about our own experiences, what's going on in the LGBTQ plus community, discussing news, having rants, basically. So yeah, there's another podcast as well. If you
Amazing. Well, I'll put all the links and notes in the show notes and on the details on the videos and stuff. So it's amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Have an amazing Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you too. I hope you appreciate the jumper.
I love the jumper. I do. I feel a bit underdressed, unfortunately, but yeah, thank you so much for your time, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you for having me.
So hopefully you enjoyed that conversation. I hope there's lots of little nuggets that you can take away there. If you do want to find out more about Sarah, I'm going to leave her details in the show notes, in the comments below this video. I really do recommend that you check out the podcast. It is really, really good. So if you are interested in SEO and you're looking to develop it as a career, or you're looking to build a new website, or you want to develop your current website, whether that be B2C or B2B, I do recommend that you check out the podcast and listen to the shows. They are really, really good. And she interviews, her and Hannah interview some amazing people that really, really know their onions about SEO. Yeah, I'll pass all their details on. But yep, hopefully you enjoyed all of that. But as always, be useful, be kind, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.